I'd like to teach you a technique for creating new backgrounds from scratch. I'm going to go ahead and make a series of gradients here. I'll just get my document sized for digital video, and I'll build up a collection of different gradients. I could do these using my gradient tool and start to combine multiple gradients on top of each other, using the transfer modes of those gradients, which allows me to mix gradients together. I may choose to run some filters on it using distort filters, polar coordinates to move those around, maybe some additional wave to move the image a bit. We'll decrease the intensity of that wave. There we go. That's an acceptable gradient. Let's go ahead and make another new layer here, and we'll fill that with 50% gray. I'm going to take advantage of my render filter here to create a lighting effect. We have several presets we can use as great starting points. I'm going to go ahead and use a crossing down light and adjust this just slightly, affecting the angle as well as the throw of the light. That there is an acceptable pattern. Let's make another. Edit, fill, 50% gray. I'm going to go ahead and go to my render filter category again, and I'm going to take advantage of the new fibers filter, which allows us to create new textures. I'll go with a low strength setting, but a lot of variance. Click OK. Let's go ahead and desaturate this image, Shift-Command-U or Shift-Control-U on a PC, and we're going to put a little extra blur in this, some motion blur to put some streaks. I'm now going to go ahead and apply just a little bit of additional distortion. We'll do some ripple here. Soften that up a bit. If it's too intense, I can choose fade, which allows me to blend it and back it off a bit in intensity, so the effect is not too strong. Make one more layer, edit, fill, 50% gray. Load my default colors of black and white by pushing D on the keyboard. And let's render out a few more things here. We'll go ahead and do some clouds while holding down the Option or Alt key, which makes them more intense. We go ahead now and render a little bit more. We'll do a lens flare, and we'll position that. You see we have a new one here called Movie Prime, and click OK. And I can also fade that, causing that to blend in a little bit more. And I'll go ahead and desaturate those colors. I've created essentially 4 very different gradients. Let's make this bottom one a layer. And now I'm going to experiment with blending modes and stacking. I've got one layer on the bottom. Let's turn this next one on. Pick the Move tool, which is one of the tools that does not have its own blending modes. You can now select a layer and use the keyboard shortcut of Shift+ to cycle through available blending modes. And you see that you can generate very diverse patterns depending upon the 2 blending modes that you combine. Some modes will produce dramatic changes, others will produce non-visible changes, in that maybe you pick color mode and you're working with 2 grayscale images, so no change is apparent. I like the color dodge mode, but I'm going to back the opacity down a little bit so it's a little less intense. Go to my next layer, turn it on. Same technique, Shift+. and I'm looking for a mode where those images blend together, giving me a pattern that I like. That works pretty well for me. Last layer, same approach, Shift plus. And I could change the blending modes until I get a pattern that I like. I'm going to go for something a little more subtle here. Let's try multiply, and we'll lower the opacity of this other layer here, so it's not quite so intense. Continue to change a little bit more. That works for me. Lower the opacity down. And we could rearrange the stacking order here, getting slightly different looks depending upon the order in which these layers are presented to you. I'm going to choose Select All, and then say Copy Merged, or Shift-Command-C on a Mac, Shift-Control-C on a PC. Paste that copy in, and let's blur that out heavily. We can now blend the blurred copy, further softening our image. I like that one. And then we can add some color. There's several ways to go about this. You can make a new layer and pick your gradient tool and load some colors you'd like to use. Paint right on the gradient and set it to color or hue mode to map those colors down. You can continue to refine the blending mode here to get different looks. There's soft light. I could continue to paint with the gradient and build that up. If that's not strong enough, add a new layer and fill it with a color that you'd like to add. Pick a color. We'll go with a lighter blue. And I'll place that into color mode. And it applies the color down. We've very quickly gone from nothing to a usable background for our video. If I'd like to refine this, I often continue with the Select All and then Copy Merge command to paste a flattened copy on top, go ahead and blur it, and then continue to blend back. Each time getting more intense colors and a nicer, softer focus look. If you'd like to, you can continue to add to this image, and one particular nice technique is to take a photo and ghost it into here. I go to the file browser and I'm going to navigate to the contents of my disk to find an acceptable image. Let's go into our stock photo folder, and I'll go into my Photo Galaxy collection here and grab a quick standard photo. Here we have a nice angel. Open that up, ignore the color profile, and we can drag this image across. Place it, desaturate, and begin to change transfer modes or blending modes. And you can get some very nice, interesting effects, and feel free to lower the opacity here to decrease the photo's presence. There we are. I think that works pretty well. This is a nice way to add a subtle but distinct visual presence to your backgrounds.